So in this instance, like she really made sure that the voices that were on the receiving end of that, or that was a personal thing for, were the ones that were elevated and really listened to. So that was amazing.
Hey Islanders, and welcome to episode 168 of the Camano Voice. Today I speak with the co-founder of the Stanwood Alliance for Equity, or SAFE. Please welcome Satin-Deseree Arnett.
Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview local business owners, comedians, singers, and more. I dive into their backstory to find out how they got where they are, what are some of the tips for you to do the same, and find out where they are going. Tune in every week as I interview more of the people you see every day.
Hey Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. And I hope you guys survived Glass Quest out there. We had a crazy time here at the marketplace, per usual. And it's always that crazy time of year. But lots of fun, great event. And and it didn't snow. I mean, it dusted during it, but it didn't like full on snow. So that was such a huge win. Hopefully some of you guys got lucky out there and were able to find one of the clue balls, so you won yourself a glass ball. If not, there's always next year. So thank you everyone that participated in that, if you haven't. Also, I just wanted to give a really quick shout out before I jump into this episode. I host a second podcast. It's called the Welcome to Camano Island podcast, and it's put on by the Chamber. But I'm also the host of that one. And in that, we just interviewed Jen and Alan Chapin, one of those. And anyways, they run Envirotech on the island, and we just got a ton of great information about septic systems, the do's, the don'ts, things, signs, and stuff like that of like if your septic system's healthy. So I know in some ways, some people might be like, that's very boring or like, not interested. But if you guys want to learn anything about septic systems, I highly suggest you jump over to the Welcome Camano Island podcast. It comes out on the first Wednesday of every month. So I just wanted to give a shout out to that. And I'll link that in the show notes below so you're able to just click through to there. Okay, into this episode. Okay, so I wanted to start off by talking about in this episode. So Satin is, like I said in the intro, is the co-founder of the Stanwood Alliance for Equity, or SAFE, which is a group here in Camano Island, in Stanwood. It's for both groups. It's in Stanwood, but it's for both Stanwood and Camano, for providing safety for people of all colors and backgrounds and everything. And I wanted to bring Satin on, one, because I wanted her to talk about this organization and why it's important in our community. But two, I'm on the very tail end of Black History Month. This is releasing on one of the last days of that month. But I felt like it was important, especially in our community. We aren't as diverse as a lot of other communities. I don't think that's news to anyone. So I really wanted to bring, talk about that a little bit, just the Black History Month, or highlight that, because I do think it's important that we learn the history of all people, of all the things. And so I wanted to talk about, I wanted to do that and mention that in the beginning of this episode. And it's also why I wanted to bring Satin on to talk about some of that stuff as well. So we have a great wide-ranging conversation. She talks about why they started SAFE in the beginning, and how it kind of all came about. And what's really cool is as we get through and talk about the story of this, and her background and what she's kind of worked through, and getting to the point that we are now, she has very positive things to say for the Stanwood Camano area, specifically in the school system, because we talk about a scenario that happened. Now, there's always more work to do, but we talked through an event that happened, and how it was handled by the school system was done so well. So we do want to give props to them for handling that situation well. And yeah, so like I said, this is a long conversation. We get into all sorts of things. Had a great time talking with Satin. So if you haven't, if you ever get a chance to say hi to her, be sure to say hi that you heard her on the Camano Voice podcast. But anyways, so yeah, like I said, this is a long podcast, so I'm just going to let it speak for itself. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Satin Arnett. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with the co-founder of Stanwood Alliance for Equity, or SAFE. Welcome to the podcast, Satin-Deseree Arnett.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so before we get started, tell us a little bit about Satin.
A little bit about me. Simple. I am originally from California, Bay Area, and I lived there most of my life. I lived around a little bit in a couple other states, Arizona and Ohio, but mostly in California. And then I moved up to Washington in Everett in middle school.
Okay.
So, and I was in that area ever since till about almost 15 years ago. I came here to Camano Island.
Okay. Very cool. What was it like growing up in California for you?
It was great. I loved California. We spent a lot of time at beaches, going to Great America, lots of family stuff. So we were out it's California, so you're out all the time.
Yeah.
So,
is most of your family still down there then?
no, I have a little bit of family out there still, but my family's kind of spread out. My father's side is mostly in the South and the East Coast.
Okay.
And then my mom's side is, most of them are actually out here now.
Okay.
So in Washington.
Nice. Did you ever do surfing and stuff like that down in California?
I did not surf.
Okay.
Nobody in my family surfed, so nobody taught me how to surf. But no, we just played at the beach and stuff. So
Yeah.
no.
Well, the beach is still good for that
Lots
too.
of bike riding and running around the neighborhoods.
Yes. Nice. So then you said you moved up to Everett. What kind of drew you guys up here?
My mom decided to move out here. Her siblings lived out here. They
Okay.
had all three at this point moved out to Washington area. So
Okay.
So she wanted to move closer to family and stuff. So that's why we moved out here. We ended up out here.
Nice.
So she told us we were moving out here, and I thought she was talking about Washington, D.C. So, but we ended up here.
A little disappointed? Or?
I didn't want to leave California, so.
I'm sure. Yeah, especially as a kid. Like, growing up where you can go to the beach all the time and it's nice and you hang out with your friends on the beach, I don't know. And then you moved to Everett.
Yeah, it was cold, and we moved here in September. So we moved here right in the beginning.
No.
It was like really cold. I remember telling my mom, I was like, I don't have any shorts for this weather. I own like 2 sweatshirts, and yeah, that was it. It was cold.
Yeah. So then how was that transition? Because that's kind of a hard time to transition into a new school and a new area in middle school.
That was actually it was a really hard transition. It was a hard time, yeah, because like I had a lot of friends out there, and I lived out there for a while, and then when we moved out here, not only the weather but the culture was really different. Like in California, in the Bay Area especially, like there was a lot of diversity, and like we were all friends. Like,
Yeah.
at school, we had our little groups of best friends and stuff, but we were all like, in the courtyard at school during lunch times and things like that. It was just everybody hanging out with everybody, running around and talking and stuff. And when I came out here to Washington and went to school, it was a really different culture. There were more like, everybody was segregated in different groups. And that was like another thing I recall telling my mother is that I don't know what group I'm supposed to be a part of.
Yeah.
and I was the only black girl at my school.
Okay.
At Evergreen Middle School. This was in the late 80s, early 90s and stuff. So yeah, I was. There was me. There was a Hispanic gal who ended up being my best friend. She was also from California a year before me. So
Okay.
we had that in common. And we had a Native American gal, and that was it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was different. It was really different. So it was definitely a culture shock.
Yeah. And how did that kind of, as you were growing up in school and stuff, like, did that, I guess, what was that kind of like for you? Because obviously it's a young age to try and be figuring out all of this culture shock, but how did that kind of play out in your life in that?
Gosh, how did that play out in my life? Well, for a while I just rebelled because I was upset about moving from home.
Of course,
and
yeah.
it was a shock, and I didn't really fit in and stuff. And so for whatever teenage and, preteen reasons and stuff, I spent a lot of time rebelling and getting into a lot of trouble. So
Yeah.
that, and trying to like figure out where I fit in with what group of friends and what people. Like I tried a lot of different groups of friends, and it just I wasn't the type to fit into one group. So I was always kind of known as the kid that I had like the 5 different groups that I would hang out with.
Yeah.
So I guess that's, something like my friends always say, like they wouldn't have known so-and-so if it wasn't for me, because I was trying to. So I've always tried to like bring people together.
Yeah.
Because I didn't like this separation.
Yeah.
And the weirdness. So,
Yeah.
So that was a big part of my life. But yeah, I did have some tough teenage years. I guess I was what you would call, or what you would have called then, an at-risk youth.
Okay.
So yeah, I got into some trouble, ended up having a hard time in high school. I went to Everett High. That was school. It was tough. So ended up going to alternative school and things like that. And yeah, I dealt with some stuff as a kid. So that, I think a lot of it was from rebelling when we moved up here and just not really fitting in. And then just, like I said, teenage stuff, I guess, we don't know why we make those decisions.
Right.
We just do.
Yeah.
But so.
Yeah. Well, and I grew up here on Camano Island, and we were part of the homeschool group, which was a pretty large group of kids, especially for being homeschooled.
Mm-hmm.
So we would, but growing up, I was not knowing it. I was kind of part of the main clique of our generational homeschool group. And my mom was really good at seeing outside of that and saying, Brandon, you need to invite so-and-so over and play. And kind of the same idea. I would go and play with them and like, oh, this is great. Yeah, they can come to our party too. So when we'd have parties at our house, I would invite, we would have anywhere from like 20 to 30, 40 kids come over to our house and hang out. But like it was, and then I would talk to all of the different kids later, and sometimes it'd be like, yeah, it was like, I didn't understand at the time, but they were kind of like, yeah, I don't know that I need to go next time or something. Just because they felt like they were on the outside. Mm-hmm. So there was just a lot of that, and I don't know if that's a Washington thing or... but yeah, that was just something interesting, because that was something we dealt with a lot. And me being on the inside, not realizing I was on the inside at that time.
Yeah. I think, I thought it was a Washington thing at first. I'm like, it's just, because it's so different. But I think it's kind of everywhere. Just depends on what area you're in,
Yeah.
kind of. So, yeah, it was strange, though.
Yeah. So then, going through all that and then graduating high school then, what were you thinking, like, when you were getting ready to exit high school? Were you thinking, like, I'm going to go just jump into work? Or were you looking at colleges? What was kind of your plan from there?
I think one of the biggest things that came from me being, an at-risk youth, or being a kid that got into a lot of trouble and kind of just, was in that world, is that even while I was in it, I wanted to help, like, kids like me or people.
Yeah.
So, like, I kind of had this idea of, like, I wanted to stop other people from going down the same paths that I went. So I've always wanted to do outreach, nonprofit work, just, like, give back. I used to, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an actress. And then I realized I had stage fright, so that didn't work out very well. Yeah, I was in a play in elementary school and I froze, and so so that dream had to change. But my other thing, I wanted to be a philanthropist. And when I was younger, I said I was going to get rich so I can give all my money away and help people. So I've always wanted to do some kind of outreach work, all kind of outreach work.
Yeah. So is that something that, were your parents big into that, or did you have friends or aunts or uncles that were kind of in that?
I probably got it from my mom the most. Most of my family, no. But my mom was big on, like, she was really, like, peace to the whole world. She wanted to bring peace to the whole world.
Yeah.
Like, can't we just all be nice and peaceful and stuff? So she was a really big inspiration in bringing people together. She was raised in the South. She was born in Germany.
Okay.
And then they came over, her father was military, and then she came over actually with her stepfather and her mother, and I believe one sibling from Germany, and they moved to Louisiana.
Okay.
So that was like, in the 50s, and Louisiana and Germany, and just all of the issues that arise from all of that coming from Germany. She lived in a really tough place. There was a lot of, obviously, racism down there and segregation and stuff. She started, she was kind of like a mini activist. She was always, when they integrated her schools, she was like the only kid in her town that refused to stay home and went to school with the black kids. And she actually got in trouble and was locked up in a juvenile home for a while because she was hanging around town too much in public with her black friends. So my mom was like, a little mini activist.
Wow.
But so she was really big on equality and bringing people together and things like that. So she kind of always raised me with that notion. So,
Yeah.
because we had a really close experience with a lot of that stuff, because her being raised out there and her family being from out there, unfortunately, some of my family members, don't appreciate me too much. So, but, so she always really made sure that, she made a point to talk about it. And, speak out that it wasn't okay and things like that. So definitely a big influence in my life of wanting to outreach and advocate.
Yeah, and was that something that you grew up hearing? Like, would she talk about that kind of her growing up and all that as you were growing up?
She did. She told us about, she never hid really much about her life and stuff. She always told us stories about what had happened and things like that. She was really big on family histories and trees and documented. She has this huge book where she's like documented. She even has that stuff documented, the court papers, everything. So she has like our whole lives, history and stuff. So she was really big on telling everything, learning from her experiences and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. My wife has gotten into family tree stuff and going back, and she's definitely spent many, many hours doing the research, and then like once you find a little strand, and following that strand, and
it's a lot of work.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's very cool. Me being adopted, I don't have as, it's a pretty short step. So. Okay.
Yeah, my mom, she did a lot. She worked for a while with people and actually helped them find their parents and things like that. Because she spent many years of her life looking for her biological father.
Okay.
So, and then she found him in her 30s.
Okay.
So, so she spent a lot of years doing that with other people.
Yeah.
Helping them.
That's great. Awesome. So being that you were kind of looking at like either actress or philanthropist, where did that lead you as you left high school then?
Well, when I left high school, I actually wanted to be an artist.
Okay.
I'm a writer, and I do a little bit of art, but not so much anymore. I used to, but not so much anymore. I don't really have the patience. So. But I wanted to go somewhere into art, but I didn't have the money for college to go to any college. I did get a partial scholarship from one of the art schools out in Seattle, but it wasn't enough. It was expensive. So I did have good grades when I graduated, even though I had some troubles as a teenager. I had a great teacher, a high school teacher, that really took me under his wing and mentored me and really got me through high school. Not only got me to graduate, but got me to see my potential. So I ended up graduating, at top of my class and
nice
4.0 and stuff. So, I did end up so I thought, okay, I'll do something. And I had no idea, because it's tough. When you're a kid, you think you know what you want to do, and then you get out into the world, and then you're like, oh, I have to actually do it. Like, is that really what I want to do?
Right.
So I went to community college, and I thought I really wanted to help people. And I kind of had some people in my family in my ear, because not a lot of people in my family went to college. And so it was like, I had the typical kind of responses, like, you got good grades and you're so smart. Go be a doctor or a lawyer or something, So I'm like, well, I can't. So I thought I'd go into physical therapy.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, that's a way to help people, And then I started taking I went to community college first to start doing like my basics and my prerequisites and stuff. And then like the prerequisites I had to take before med school or before school for physical therapy.
Yeah.
They drove me nuts. They absolutely bored me and I couldn't handle them. So I was like, nope, this is not for me.
Glad you learned that beforehand.
This is not for me. So I could not memorize another medical term or psychology. No, I couldn't do it. So I figured, that's not my path. So I stepped back for a while, and then I tried again and just did, I thought maybe just a basic AA and stuff. And then I had one child right after I graduated high school, so I was a mom already, and I was a single mom. And then I had my second daughter, and going to school and raising a baby that was hanging on you all the time. I tried to do the online thing for a while. That doesn't work out for me. So I stepped back again for the second time and raised my child for a while. And then years later, I decided that I was going, and then I just went into the work. I worked. I did some different jobs. I was photography for a little while, retail, stuff like that. And then I went to college a third time, and I decided, well, I'm going to go for business management, because then no matter what I do, I can run it.
Yes. Yeah.
Since I realized that I have no idea what I want to do when I grow up. This was my mid to late 20s by now.
Yep.
So it's like, I'll just go for business management and just, figure it out after that. So I went back to school one more time, and I have to admit, I did not finish. I got very close. But then I was in retail at the time, and I started moving up and up and up and reached management and things like that really quick. So I decided, instead of continuing to pay for school, that I was just going to start my own business.
Yeah.
So me and a friend of mine, we started a cleaning business, and we did really well. But I really didn't like cleaning, so
Yes.
we did pretty good, but cleaning wasn't for me, so I couldn't do that for the rest of my life.
Yes.
So then after that, I stayed home for a while. We have a lot of kids, so it was hard. Me and my husband both working.
Yep.
We have 9 kids between the two of us.
Wow.
Yeah. I guess I could have said that and tell us about Satin. So yeah, we have 9 between the two, blended family.
Wow, very cool.
So I stayed home, and then I stayed home for a while, for a few years, and then I got to the point where I think it was the first time in 20 years where I had no kids at home. Like, they were all in school. We were sending the youngest off to kindergarten. And so I decided to go to real estate school, because it's something I always want to try. So
Yeah.
I guess I kind of have this entrepreneurial spirit where I just, want to try things until I figure out what I really want to do. But I've always had a dream of opening up a nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
So I've always had that dream and always kind of been working on that plan in the back of my head.
Yep.
Times like that. So
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. We've got 4 kids, and I feel like it is a lot to handle. 9. I can't imagine having 9 kids.
Yeah, we have 4 still at home. So
wow.
So.
You guys are still in it.
We're almost there.
Oh, yeah. And I love the piece about the cleaning business, because there was a time where my dad was saying, like, okay, you guys need to go to college. So I want you guys to go to college, and you have to pick a degree that's, you can get a job with. He's like, I'm not paying for you to do a degree that you just want to do because it sounds fun. But, like, you need to make money out of it. So I was like, okay. And there was, different points where I just hit walls in my high school years, or as I was starting to get into college. I was like, why don't I just start working? I should just start working. And he's like, Brandon, you hate physical labor. Like, when we did yard work in the yard, you hated every minute of it. And I'm like, yeah, but, like, I could do other things in construction or something. He's like, really? He's like, I mean, you can do that. You can. You're going to hate it. And pretty quickly I was like, thought about it more and more. I'm like, yeah, no, I can't do that. But yeah, that same thing. Like, I could start a business that did this and then be like, I hate this.
That reminds me of one of my sons. He keeps asking me, he wants to start working. He's almost 15. And he's like, Mom, can I start a pet sitting business and dog walking business or something? And I'm like, yeah, you can, but you don't even like taking our dog out. So I can barely get you to do that.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, we've got now he's 10. He turned 10 this year. It's crazy. So, yeah, we've got twin girls that are 11 turning 12 soon, and then we've got a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old turning 7 soon. But the 10-year-old is always just like, okay, well, I could do this or I could do this. And I'm like, yes, but you've got to, like, try something and then see if you like it and focus on it. And like one thing that he's been talking about a lot is YouTube, and he's like, I want to do a YouTube channel. And I'm like, okay, great. So like this weekend we were trying to work on it a little bit, and I'm like, okay, so film a video and then just play around with editing, try and do weird things to it, stuff like that. He did he filmed the video, which ended up being like a half hour long. I'm like, well, I meant like a 5-minute video. And then he played for it for probably like 10 minutes and then was done and ran off and wanted to go do something else. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well,
that focus, we need to work on that piece. But
well, they tried. That's what, I'm a big believer in that. I tell my kids all the time, like, especially when they're kids, tell them, try as much as you can now. Because
yes,
there's going to be a point where you don't have that freedom to try things and you have to actually work or you have to have more responsibility. So try everything you can now so you actually know what you want to do or what you like. Because it's easy when you're a kid, you have all these, I want to be this when I grow up. And some kids are like, they stick with it all through childhood instead.
Yeah.
And then when they try it and they're like, oh, I don't even like this, Like, you say, we have a lot of kids. So we've seen that from some of our kids. They're like, I'm going to be this. And they're the same thing forever. And then they get there and they're like, no. And they go into something totally. We had a daughter that wanted to be a veterinarian. All her life wanted to be a veterinarian.
Yep.
She's a plumber now. So, and she loves it, so it's like she went into the trade. She's like, no, I'm going, college wasn't for her. She didn't, and she does great. And then on the other hand, we had a son that wanted to go in law enforcement and he ended up, doing it and stuff. So it's like, you never know. So that's why I tell them, try everything you can, sports, different things. That's why I love working with kids so much too. And I love about our school district too. We have a lot of those trade opportunities and things like that for kids to try different things. So they're not just imagining they want to be something and they have no idea,
Yeah.
Because you really have no idea until you get out there.
Right.
So try it. Why not?
Yeah, no, that's great. And my wife is really good at that with our kids. Of, when they show interest in something, we do it's kind of homeschool. It's kind of private school, but it's like they go once or twice a week and then do most of the homework at home. But she's always willing to be flexible on certain things. Like if they start finding an interest in something, she's like, okay, let's pick up a book. Let's start reading about that and learning about that. And so she's really good at kind of, following their interests. And, and then when that interest wanes and they kind of switch to a new thing, she lets them kind of do that. So
yeah,
that's cool.
That's good. I just have to let my kids know when they try things, make sure that you really like it and you have to be really into it before I start dumping all this money extra, because some trying things can get expensive.
Yes. No, we haven't.
And even with sports, they would do sports, and the next year I'd ask them, do you want to do it again? Are you sure? Because, we have to pay, so be sure that you want to do it. So it's okay if you don't.
It's on pay and time. Because it's like every day you're like, all right, I got to get you over to this thing. And it's a lot. But
at least try.
Yes. So how did that go then? You find that you started doing, went into real estate. How did that go? Was it what you were expecting?
I don't think real estate is ever what anybody's expecting going into it. From afar, it looks a lot easier than it is. I did love the work. I did love it. I am a weird person who actually likes contracts and things like that. So, and that's what a lot of real estate is about. So I really liked it. And I liked helping people get homes and, sell home, things like that. It's a big part of somebody's life, big decision. Yeah. So it's a really cool thing to be a part of that. The constantly trying to sell myself is not really who I am so much. So that was kind of a hurdle for me doing that, because you're constantly having to sell yourself and put yourself out there and stuff like that. So that was a little tough. But other than that, it was, I liked it, but definitely not what I expected. You don't know what you, They make it out to be a lot more glamorous than it is on the outside. I mean, I didn't really, I did a lot of research. I have a friend that was in real estate for a while before I did, so I actually talked to her first and was like, told her, we're longtime friends, and I'm like, tell me the truth. Don't just tell me what everybody else that tries to get people in real estate tells them, like you're just going to make all this money and sell all these houses. Tell me the truth. And so she told me the truth. So I guess I did have, a little bit of honest knowledge going in and stuff. But again, it was something I always wanted to try. So when I had that opportunity to take some classes and do it, I tried it. So.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think real estate is one of those things that I think is really interesting from from taking that on, but I have spoken to a lot of real estate agents, and I've seen a lot of them. We're right next door to Windermere, so we see a lot of new agents come in, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna," especially during like the crazy housing stuff we were just going through, where they're like, "You could hold up a sign on the side of the street and sell a house. Like you can do basically whatever you want." So seeing some of these people jump in and then like not immediately getting those results, and not immediate, and then again seeing the work they had to put into it, like. And I've spoken with Marla, was the owner of Windermere, and when she talks to people about joining real estate, she's like, "So you need to have a good amount of savings, and you're going to work really, really hard." And I think she says like for the first like 2 years before you're really going to see something. And I was always like, that's what they need to hear when they get started. And what's cool about that to me is we had a barista here that worked for us, and she wanted to do real estate, and her aunt had done real estate, and she's like, I think I would enjoy it. And I was like, well, I think you would do great in it. She was one of our baristas. She was a great barista. And anyway, she met with Marla, and I talked to her afterwards. I was like, so how do you think it went? She's like, well, it sounds like it's really difficult to get into, but I think I still want to do it. And earlier this year, I saw a post on her Facebook that said like my first open house or whatever, and then she closed on the house, and I was just like, it's so exciting to see like that she followed it through and did that work, and so I sent her a quick message just like, hey, congrats on your house, that's really cool. So
yeah, that's good. It's really good when you're successful in it. But yeah, definitely it's definitely not a regular job. It's basically like starting your own business. So you have to invest not only a lot of time but a lot of money to start out after you not only take the courses and then do the testing, and then all the fees that you have to pay involved in it and things like that. So
and
yeah, it's definitely definitely an investment into yourself.
Yeah.
So
very cool. So then, as you were doing that, was that did you start getting into starting SAFE at that point, or were you just focused on real estate, and then what kind of happened from there? I
just did real estate for a while, and then SAFE actually came about after the murder of George Floyd. So we all know 2020, like something shifted in this world.
The whole world.
And next thing you know, we were like, we were watching our lives like a movie, I'd say, in every aspect, right? Socially, medically, politically, like every aspect, personally. So that was after the murder of George Floyd, and obviously there was a lot of racial tension. There was a lot of then the Black Lives Matter movement came back to a rise and things like that. We had a couple of things in our community. There was a few things. We had there were some vigils held for George Floyd. And but there were also some protests that were started by some teenagers in our community in support of the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that was going on. So with that, sadly, we saw a lot of negativity in our community. But then also we saw a lot of positivity, and a lot of people kind of banding together. So we had some community members that ended up putting on a vigil for George Floyd. And they did it over at the park, or the skate park. And they had during that, the kids were drawing some things with sidewalk chalk and stuff like that. And then, sadly, those drawings got vandalized with some things and some racial slurs. And so a group of community members then got back together to fix that. And so that is where I met a great gal named Heather White. And we got to talking, and we just started talking for a while. And then she told me that there were some people in the community that want to do something, that they just want to get together and start talking about what they can do, you know, to be supportive and to help. And so I remember asking her, the first question I asked her about, I said, well, that's great. I'd love to meet these people. And I asked her, I said, are there any people of color in this group? And she said no. So I was like, okay, not surprised. But, it's the community we live in. It's okay. So So she got me in touch with some people, with the people that were in this group, and she was one of them and stuff. And we started talking about what our community needs, what our community is going through, what some of the people in our community were going through, and just started trying to find ways that we can just be supportive and help in the community. And that is where SAFE was eventually born from, just some community members getting together and wanting to do something good. And we started doing some different things, everything from providing craft stuff to some of the elementary school kids and some of the daycares. Like we put together packets. Crayola has a line called Skin Tone Crayons and things like that and stuff. And the Band-Aids, the Skin Tone Band-Aids and stuff. So we, gave those classrooms that way. They can be more inclusive and have a little something for everybody and things like that. And all the way to where we would advocate, to the school board for different things. There was a position that we advocated for and things like that and stuff. So yeah, and then we got to the point where we were like, let's be for real. Let's be a nonprofit organization. Let's make this thing. So some of the people in the group, we started getting together and talking about that, writing bylaws and all that stuff and everything. And now we're SAFE.
Yeah. So again, SAFE stands for Stanwood Alliance for Equity.
It's actually, I'm sorry.
Oh, did I have that wrong?
It's actually Stanwood Camano Alliance for Equity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we abbreviate the Stanwood Camano because, we share a school district. We are a community, really. Stanwood. I know we're different counties and everything, but I've always thought of us as a community.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing when it comes to Stanwood Camano is both of us, both Stanwood and Camano, are the two forgotten pieces of their respective counties.
Exactly. Like that's why I always say people don't come here by accident. Like you don't. It's not one of those where you drive through the freeway and you drive through the town and you stop in. Like they have to purposely come here.
Yeah.
Yes, we're on the
Absolutely.
outskirts of everything. We really liked the acronym SAFE, so we abbreviated the Stanwood Camano.
Nice.
So we can.
There we go. Instead of SCAFE.
Well, and then there is another organization out here that is close to that has a C in there, so we didn't want to, intrude on that
There's
and
a lot
stuff
of-
too.
there's
Try
a
to
lot of
sound the
ones.
same or get confused. So
Yes.
we respected that. Yeah. So,
Very cool. So, it kind of, as it all kind of came about, it's kind of happenstance and it kind of keeps evolving and evolving. As you guys kind of really formed into a nonprofit and really focused on this stuff, what did you guys see as the goal for this group?
The goal for this group, we wanted to open up the conversations more. We wanted to help people. We saw our community was really struggling with having tough conversations. We saw a lot of people in the community that wanted to have them, but they didn't really know how or, where or who they could talk to. It wasn't really, something that was brought up here a lot in the past and stuff. So that was a big thing. We wanted to create some kind of a safe space or safe platform to be able to help people have these conversations and help our local community learn about some of the things that they wanted to learn about or some of the things that we were struggling with. So that was a big thing. And we wanted to work with the schools. We wanted to help the kids and help, provide a safe, just equitable and a good, safe place to just be themselves and be able to. Childhood is tough enough.
Yes, absolutely.
So they should, they have their own kid problems and stuff and hard teenage problems and everything. They shouldn't have to deal with our adult issues.
Right.
So that was a big thing. So it was just really about creating safe places and uplifting voices that haven't normally been heard or listened to or uplifted in this community. So one question I have with that. So there's two parts to the question, I guess. The first is kind of about the diversity in Stanwood Camano and how it's not super diverse. But two, in that type of environment, in that community that we live in, how do people, on the conversation side, there's that side, but then how do you actually help in it as well when it's not something that it's interacted on a regular basis because there's not a huge amount of diversity here? Yeah, that is true. There's not a lot of diversity, but I'm going to tell you, in the 15 years I've been here, it has changed a lot.
Yeah.
Like when I first moved out here, my husband's mother, my mother-in-law, lived out here. And so we lived out in the Edmonds area, and I didn't, part of it, I didn't really want to keep raising my kids out in that area. It
Yeah.
just, I grew up out in that area. I know how it can be. I was one of those parents. So, and then he wanted to be closer to his mom at that point. So we moved out here, but then I was like, it was another culture shock because I was like, where did you move me to?
Yeah.
Like, I felt like I was the only one.
Yeah.
Like I would get excited if I would see somebody with like a tan out and like, look, So definitely not the most diverse place. I mean, yeah, I remember when my daughter came home one year. She's 26 now. She came home and she was like, "Mom, there's a black girl on the bus." It was like, yeah. So I know, definitely not a diverse place. But we have gotten a lot more diverse. We do have a lot more diversity, and we kind of had to start looking at it in a way, if like just because it's not diverse doesn't mean the few of us that are here, like our voices aren't as important,
right.
And things like that. And then I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I exactly remember the second part totally to your question.
No, you're good. You really kind of answered both of them in that.
Okay.
Because, my first question was kind of like, how have you seen it change in those 15 years of being here?
Yeah.
How much more diversity has there been since
Yeah.
then? And then, really just how do you talk about these things? How do you kind of help in these things when it feels like the community isn't as diverse?
That's the other part. How do we help in those things? I've really found that the best way to get the community to have these conversations or be okay with it or even want to sometimes and stuff is to listen to the people that are going through whatever the conversation is around. Like if we're talking about racism, like listen to the people in the community that do see it, that have dealt with it, because a lot of in the beginning, a lot of what I would get from a lot of community members is like, like I know racism is a thing, it exists, but not here, right? And I kind of have to make some people realize, like, because I'd get they would just tell me, but I don't see it. Like, if you don't experience it, you're probably not gonna see it as much. So it was really, that was a big kind of eye-opening thing where a lot of people realized, like, just because I don't see it doesn't mean it's not here. So maybe I should listen to somebody who might, see it and stuff. So listening to those, that's why it's a big part of SAFE, and one of our, big pieces of our mission is to uplift those voices. Because, and even though we have had our issues in our community, we are still the type of community that is very driven by the sense of community, by bonding and getting together. Because we can have a community that is fighting politically, fighting educationally, fighting all this, but if somebody in the community all of a sudden needs something, everybody from all sides pitches in and helps, So I think, once we started getting those voices out into our community, and where our community saw that, there are people struggling with that sort of thing, like we're not perfect, we're not the one perfect community member, on their community on the map. We do have people here that struggle with these things.
Yeah.
It really got to the point where, like, a lot of people, they wanted to talk about it, and they wanted to have these conversations, and they wanted to learn, and they wanted to help and stuff. So it really, like I said, even though it was really, hard at first, there's a lot of pushback. It got to the point where, like I always say, it's some people have, those are the louder voices. They're not the majority, So for a while, they were the loudest voices, the ones that didn't want to talk about these things, but once we kept talking about them, it really, you can see that wasn't the majority. Most of our community members wanted to be there for each other. So it was really good, because I didn't always feel like that was the case.
Yeah.
Probably because I was kind of feeling like I was looking from the outside.
Yeah.
So, but.
Yeah, I'm sure. And, until you really get into it, you don't really know. And, like, that question isn't, some of these questions haven't been asked. And so you're like, what is the response going to be? Yeah,
and I think mostly, like, our community just hasn't talked about it because of our lack of diversity. We haven't had a lot of diversity, so there's not a lot of space for that conversation.
Right.
So, so it's not like nobody cares or people don't think it's real. It's just there just hasn't been a huge, space for that conversation.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. So, then when was SAFE actually started then?
Okay.
Like, when did you guys officially, I guess, turn into an organization?
Well, yeah. So I would say, our group started after the murder of George Floyd, like I said, but we officially applied for and got our, from the Secretary of State, all that stuff, for to be able
Of course, yeah.
Washington State nonprofit. We're coming up on our year anniversary next month.
Okay, very cool.
So, yeah.
Awesome. So to date then, and this is going to be before you guys were officially, whatever, but what have been some of the biggest successes for the organization to date?
I would say, hands down, our biggest success would be the partnership we have with our school district. Definitely.
Yeah. How's that kind of played out?
It's been amazing. I've always been very involved in the school district in some kind of way and stuff. Usually, I have to admit, sometimes I was that angry parent that would show up, mad at the school board for something, or, mad at the teacher, or asking questions and things like that. But I've always, really cared about the district and stuff and tried to be involved in any way I could. But shortly after we started SAFE, before we went legit, but when our group started talking and getting together in 2020, one of the people from the original group, she actually worked at the school district. And she said that she was having a hard time with some things in the classes that she was teaching. And, she wanted to start having these conversations more in school. And so she introduced me to somebody at the school district, Maureen Stanton, amazing woman that works at our district. And we just sat down and had a conversation. I don't know, we talked for hours, a few hours, I think, or something. It was a very lengthy conversation. And really, she just asked me to hear my story, why I was doing what I was doing and, my personal story, and wanted to hear my experiences and things like that. And it was a great conversation. And I think it was a couple days later, she reached out to me and asked, do you want to help me start an equity team for the district? I was like, yeah, of course I do.
Wow, very cool.
So, they had a couple of our SAFE members join the equity team, myself and one other, and we started a district equity team. We spent a lot of time, trying to make sure that we were putting it together, trying to put it together and kind of figure things out. It wasn't the easiest at first because there was a lot of different people with a lot of different opinions coming together and trying to. And this was already a kind of hard topic because they did want to, we look at equity overall, but they did at the time want to focus on racial equity because that was such a huge focus. And they wanted to make sure that our schools were safe for the kids and stuff. So it was definitely a rocky start. But we stuck with it, and we kept meeting, and we kept, learning from each other and stuff. And we have done some absolutely amazing things. And then one of the biggest turning points for that, we had a district-wide forum with the kids, with our students, and some of our students of color from all ages. They came to, it was on Zoom because we were still doing things to Zoom then, So we had a district-wide forum on Zoom with some of our students, and they just shared their experiences being in the school district, in this community and stuff. And after that, it was just about everybody in the district, after they heard from the students what they have dealt with, what they've heard, what they've, had happen to them and things like that, they just were like, how can we help? How can we do things differently? How can we create a space that, our kids feel safe and welcome here and stuff? And so just that our journey kind of took off from there, and we've done some amazing things. We are very student voice led, so we've gotten it to where, pretty much everything we do, we ask the students, what do you need? And, how can you, so a lot of our stuff, student voice led, we have them participate in everything. Now we have student equity teams in our high schools and middle schools, student led. So yeah, it's great. Our kids just this past month, for Martin Luther King Jr., to celebrate him, they put on an amazing, our equity team and some other students and some of our staff, they put on this amazing assembly for the students. And it was just so wonderful to watch because, not just because the assembly was amazing, which it was, but it was because like some of our students that got up and spoke, they were not only speaking about Martin Luther King and different activists and stuff like that, but they were relating it to their lives too and their experiences. So they spoke some of their truths. And just to know that our district has worked that, the work that we've done has gotten to a place where our kids are beginning to feel comfortable enough to talk to their peers like that. It was really amazing. So, not to say that we don't have a lot of work to go still,
Yeah.
we are dealing with kids. It's not always going to be stay the same, be perfect. It's an ongoing process. But it was really one of those moments that made me realize, you have those moments where you're like, yeah, what I'm doing is like worth it. Like it's totally, like this is, yeah. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. So one of the things I wanted to touch on is as I was kind of doing research for this podcast, and then I saw some things come up, and so I wanted to talk through. There was a football game that happened here in Stanwood that there was racial slurs used during the game and things like that, and then. Then there was an investigation and there was all sorts of stuff that kind of happened. But it sounds like SAFE was part of that, at least part of that conversation and everything. Can you talk us a little bit through what happened and how that was handled?
Yeah, I will. We definitely were a part of that conversation. That's another thing I really appreciate about our district is they always make us part of the conversation, is they always make the community. Our superintendent is an amazing woman, and she really makes it a point to make the community always a part of the conversation when it's a big deal. So in this instance, like she really made sure that the voices that were on the receiving end of that, or that was a personal thing for, were the ones that were elevated and really listened to. So that was amazing. They had, just like any school would in an instance like this, they had the investigation and stuff. I'm, being 100% honest, and everybody knows how I feel. I was not expecting the outcome to be as it was. Like I kind of, doing this work, and then, I've not, I've been in it long enough to know, and then I've been Black long enough to know. Sorry, but it doesn't always. A lot of times these things get swept under the rug.
Yeah.
People don't want to talk about it, or they want to kind of save the school's reputation, or a certain, reputation, or things like that, or they want to just, because you have people on both sides all the time, for or against it, or things like that. So it's not always something that comes out in the open. But the work I was doing with them made me really hopeful that it was going to be handled the correct way. But then kind of the realistic, when we think about, when we deal with these things in the past, it usually isn't. So, so I was kind of, but I was always very honest with them too about that and about everything that I felt during it, because it was kind of personal for me too. It wasn't just a lot of these things. It's not just, okay, SAFE needs to get involved, we need to talk, but it's like, it's personal for me. So I go in as SAFE, but I also go in as, this is how it personally affects me, and this is my perspective, and how it might be affecting some of your students. So, so I was really happy and surprised, the investigation came back. I can't, I don't want to go into too much deal about the investigation because I'm not going to get the right words and stuff like that. Anybody that wants to look it up, they can look up what the school said the findings were and things like that. But the biggest point behind it and stuff is they believed the kids. They believed, the student that had something said to her in the bathroom. They believed, they believed the kids. And one of the things that they said that really made me happy and that really made me realize like they're really listening is they said to me, this is because I told them, I said, this is not just a one-time thing. This is not just a one-off. Like, this is just the one that made it in the papers. So, and so, and they took what I said to them, and I really believe they listened. They listened to the students, because some of the students spoke up too. And they said, no matter what happens with the investigation, we're listening to the people that it has affected, to our students and our community members that are telling us, because the big thing that this story brought up it wasn't so much about the fight of did this happen or did this not happen. It really brought up, if you looked on social media, it was like parents or students who were like, this happened to me, this happened to my kid, this is what I dealt with when I went to school there, and things like that. So those are the voices that the district was listening to.
Yeah.
That, no matter what happens with this investigation, this is obviously an issue that we have to address.
Yeah.
That we can't just be like, oh, investigation's done, we punished one kid or something and we're moving on, or nothing happened and move on, something that it needs to be addressed. We need to listen. And so, so that was amazing. So, as soon as the investigation did come back, like our superintendent, she had a plan. She had a laid out plan of, trainings and making sure our students knew the policies and, whatever system changes needed to be made, just anything. Like she really cared, and you can show in her work, like she did the work to be able to do what was right, and she listened to the voices that were affected. So our whole district rallied, around and helped and stuff in our equity team, and everybody was great. Our high school staff and admin team and stuff. It was, like I said, it still surprises me sometimes, but it gives me a lot of hope for our community to be able to say, as, a DEI worker and as an anti-racist, activist, to be able to say, like, they did what they needed. They did. They handled it right.
Yeah.
They did the work, and they're still doing the work, and it's going to be an ongoing process, and they're not backing down from it. So,
that's awesome. Yeah, I think we can all relate on that side of what you were saying of when something bad happens. And, in this example is due to racism, but we've seen this happen a lot of times where something bad happens and you're waiting for someone to do something, or you're waiting for them to take responsibility or take the right step, and then they don't, and then time happens and it just kind of gets forgotten. And that disappointment you feel of like, I thought we were making a difference. I thought we were moving forward. And to have the reverse of that, and to have that be answered and actually be worked on and spoken about, is just really, really neat to be able to share that. And that's very cool that when it played out that way.
Yeah, I'm happy. 'Cause, in all honesty, if you would have asked me this a few years ago before I started working with them, working with SAFE, if this was a possibility, I would have never believed you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I said, it wasn't necessarily because our school district was horrible. It's just we weren't having these conversations and we weren't working together yet.
Yep.
So
Yep.
we were acting, a lot of times you kind of feel like you're on the opposite side of somebody, but it's just because you haven't taken the time to find your equal ground.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Very cool. So what do you see as the future of SAFE moving forward then?
The future of SAFE, with SAFE, it's, we have some goals. We do have a few goals. We would love to have an actual physical location in town eventually for, people to be able to come, and we have some ideas for that and stuff. So that is a future goal. I really just want to keep doing the work that I'm doing, and it really, it kind of comes organically because we really work on a belief of, we need to advocate for what our community needs at the moment, or what our community is struggling with. And when you're dealing with equity work, you never know what's going to come up. So it could be advocating for anything. So we really build programs and things like that based on our community needs and stuff. So that's really what we work to. We're right now we're really focusing on just making relationships with other organizations in the community. Like we do a lot of work with the CRC, the Community Resource Center, and so we did some work with Doug Standish. I'll always partner with him. He runs the youth program at the YMCA. Yeah. And then, so just partnering with other organizations and kind of getting together and seeing where we can help each other and things like that. So that's a big thing, just kind of getting the community together more and helping each other and stuff. So
awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I like to end every podcast with some rapid fire questions. So the first one is, what purchase of $100 or less have you enjoyed the most in the last 3 months?
Oh, that's easy. That's my mochas just across the street from here at the drive-through stand.
Nice.
At the Camano Island Coffee there. Because not only do I get I'm not a huge coffee drinker, so my mochas are a treat. Not only do I get my mocha, but it's my time out of the house, away from all the kids and not working or anything. So I'm like, my husband comes home and I'm like, I'm going to get a mocha. And mom leaves for a while.
Awesome. Who is the most influential person outside of your family in your life?
Oh, that's tough. The most influential person outside of my family, I would have to say one of my best friend's mom. Her name was Anne, and she was huge in making sure that we knew that we weren't where we came from and we weren't our mistakes, and that we could overcome. Sorry, I'm getting a little. We lost her not that long ago, but yeah, she just really always made me believe that I was more than anybody thought I was, or I was just, I was more than even what I thought I was sometimes. So she really, I think that she was the main reason why I got out of the lifestyle that I was, or even when I was in it, I knew that that wasn't going to be my life, that I was better than that. So
awesome.
She definitely.
That's so cool. All right, this is a fill in the blank question. I know this is weird, but I've always wanted to blank.
I know this. I don't know if I want to do any weird things. I know this is weird, but I've always wanted to. Oh, gosh. This is supposed to be rapid fire. I'm not being very rapid on this one, am I?
I mean, if you don't have anything, that's fine, too.
I think that the weirdest thing is my philanthropy, I think, because people used to always tell me I was crazy because I used to say that I wanted to be rich just so I can give all my money away. They're like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, just give it away. Help. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I've always wanted to give my money away. That's weird.
There you go. Awesome. All right. Who's an interesting or fascinating person that I should interview next?
I would say Heather White. She started an amazing outdoor school on this island. She's going to hate me because I can't remember the name of it exactly. But, Heather White. She is an amazing person. She was actually the person that introduced me to the group that is SAFE now. So she is, she is a founding SAFE member. But she is big in early childhood education and in equity and, in childhood education, things like that. And she started an amazing outdoor curriculum out here, an outdoor school, and she has done wonders, which it's great because kids learning in an outdoor setting, what is better than that? Yeah. So she has an amazing program, and it's still, fairly new, a couple years in, I think. I think you should. And she's got a lot. She's just amazing all around. She's still really big into, the equity work and things like that. So she does some great things for our community.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Very cool. All right. And lastly, what piece of advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Oh, you're not ready. I was one of those, I got an idea and I would jump in and try to do it and stuff. And then, it took a while to realize, I just wasn't ready. Now I look back and I'm like, how come I just wasn't ready? You have those things where you're like, I'm glad I didn't try this. You're not ready.
Well, very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Satin-Deseree Arnett for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us be found by other Islanders like yourself. And for more information on this episode, you can go to CamanoCommons.com/podcast. That's CamanoCommons.com/podcast. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.